Alrighty, guys, welcome to part two of the night. Welcome back from break. Going back into the TagOut podcast, the John Cena and Randy Orton story. If you are just joining us, let's get back into it. So we left off with the SummerSlam. They're leading up to it. So this was like they've known this SummerSlam now, 2009. This was like the controversy SummerSlam. Do you remember this very much? Like they. It seemed like there was a fan that interrupted the match, and it looked so real. Hey, there's the host. Yay! Thank you for the host.
Oh.
It looked so real that you thought for a second, damn, a fan jumped over the barricade and got involved in this match. But it was a work. It was fake, but.
Well, how you know is because because it's not uncommon that sometimes a fan gets over the guardrail into the ring. Sometimes the camera will veer off a bit, but how I knew is that they were so zeroed into this guy who came into the ring.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, it's a part of the story. It's not really, it's not really an actual fan, because they wouldn't pay any attention to that. Vince would have been like, cut it off, quick. You remember the Hall of Fame in 2019 where Bret Hart was attacked? They cut it off a little bit. So,
yep, I remember that. Fuck that guy that attacked Bret Hart.
They don't want that kind of attention where fans are hijacking the show.
No, they don't. But this was, it was a work, so they were using their real life issues that does happen in WWE to their advantage here. But it was more of just trying, like, how can we just piss off John Cena this entire time kind of match, and that's what it was. But Orton, he RKO'd Cena after the fan ran in.
Right.
So that set them up to an I Quit match. And that's when now it got really violent. The rivalry took a turn for violence here, because you started seeing them really now bringing out more weapons. The handcuffs thing is getting involved a lot. They're starting really to throw good shots at each other. It's getting really violent. It's getting heated a lot more than it ever was before. And to the point where now Cena, he's got Orton by the throat with the handcuffs, and he's pulling his neck back, and he forces Orton to say I quit. This was one of the most violent moments between the two of them. It's really when it started to kick off here, because now we finally get the opportunity. Like I said earlier, they had so many times where they met in multi-man matches. Now we're zeroing in on one-on-ones now between Cena and Orton.
Yep. We're getting it's boiling over. It's you see a more darker side of Cena. They really brought out a very darker Cena in this rivalry. You saw a lot more of a dangerous Cena, because before you would see him get violent with people, but it just seemed like they got nasty with each other.
Yeah.
Orton and Cena, to the point where they're going to kill each other. It's beyond professional competition. We're talking story here, folks. It's beyond professional competition now. It's more into, okay, this is deep, and you're getting deep. And Orton was getting into deeper rivalries. Yeah. Because we're talking about, what, 2009?
Yep, 2009.
Okay. So you're just off the heels of him and Triple H having that very personal storyline with one another. Triple H breaks into Orton's house and things like that. So you're seeing Orton in a more darker, more personal rivalry. He can push people's buttons,
right,
to go the extra, for what am I trying to say? For good people to go the extra mile to, really get pissed off, it seems like.
And it was good character work here, both of them. Really good character work.
You see an evolution in their characters.
They play off each other so well. They're maturing. God. They're maturing from from what just happened in 2008, which was really hot. But they're maturing now into their own. and they know each other so well. They've been doing this forever. They know the choreography between the two of them at this time was so seamless. It was really well done.
It was very Shakespearean, very, very, as a theater kid, very Shakespearean.
Yeah.
Very, 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 not Romeo and Juliet, but very King Henry. You're talking Henry V. You're talking King. You're talking about Orton as a King Louis XIV here.
Yeah.
The entitled monarch who wants more out of life. You know what I mean? And you have everything, there. So you're seeing that kind of character work. It's like poetry, man. I think that really brought them to a different echelon of their careers. But I think
the violence escalated to the point where they got to Hell in a Cell, they got to the
you forgot one, the Iron Man match at their no disqualification Iron Man match. It's funny in those three matches, the titles changed hands. It kind of hot-potatoed the title
back and
quite
forth
a bit.
And that that brings me back to my earlier point that I made in the start of the podcast, that the numbers started to matter here. They started to add up. The back and forth started to matter because now they started to talk about how many championships that they had between the two of them.
Mm-hmm. And you saw that Iron Man match. It's a little hard to watch 60-minute Iron Man matches, but it was good for what it was worth.
They and they had if Cena lost, he would leave Raw and have to go to SmackDown. I think they went all the way up into I think it was the last minute of the match, and Cena made him tap out, and now Cena picks up number 5.
I lost count.
And that was cool. There, yeah, so they're almost tied at this point, the two of them. Thank you for that posture check. And then another hot potato, because then they meet again in the Elimination Chamber, and Legacy's now broken up. Cena and Orton are fighting a little bit, but not here. But Cena wins the Elimination Chamber now for number 6 championship for him, and then literally loses the championship right afterwards to Batista. Hot potatoed it right afterwards to Batista. And then Cena got it right back at WrestleMania when he beat Batista in an I Quit match. He won it back at WrestleMania and then defended it again in an I Quit match at Batista. So, and then we don't see much between Orton and we don't see much between Cena at all during this time. But Orton, they finally get into another multi-man match between Edge, Orton, Sheamus, and John Cena. And that time, Sheamus wins. So this was kind of like the conclusion on the story a little bit between Cena and Orton.
More of it to be continued.
Yeah, to be continued, yeah.
Yeah, but it kind of buttoned up that portion of the rivalry. I think we kind of skipped over Hell in a Cell 2009, but that was kind of one of the last pay-per-view matches that they've met.
The two of them, yeah.
In for a while, which you hit up 4 years later. You're hitting up 4 years later now. They meet again, probably in one of the most important championship matches in a while. The title unification match.
Yeah.
Between the world heavyweight champion who was John Cena and WWE champion Randy Orton.
They went off, and at this point they did their own things. Orton had many rivalries after that. He took some time off, he came back. Cena took time off, came back. Cena feuded with Punk. He feuded with the Nexus. Orton feuded with Barrett and the Nexus. There was just back and forth. There wasn't really a lot between, like we said, but we fast forward now all the way till 2013. How many titles now between the two of them before they meet again, as before the unification of the championships? How many had they had at that point? Do you
I'm
know?
thinking, because I didn't do the. Let's see. I'm thinking because Cena is at 15. I believe so. Cena's at 15.
Because he
At
beats
this
The
time.
Rock. He beats The Rock, and I was number 11, I think.
Right, but we're talking combined.
Yeah.
We're
So
talking World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE
I think you're
Championship.
right. It was a total of 15. Yeah. So
So
finally,
I
yeah,
think 15, and Orton is I think at his
12th.
I think his 12th. Yeah, that's his 12th
The captain now
World
says, "Can we
Championship.
make Jeremy stretch?"
Huh?
The captain now is asking, "Can we make Jeremy stretch as well?"
Stretch?
Yeah.
Are we in a 7th inning stretch here?
Yeah. um, but yeah. So they're finally, the point I'm trying to make is they went off and they came back together, and they had pinnacles at their careers. They were multiple championships into they're into the teens now. They're both champion, respectively. They're both brand, and they forgive me if I'm wrong, but a lot of going back and forth between Raw and SmackDown during these times, right? A lot of the wrestlers going back and forth.
Yeah, because at that time, you're kind of seeing the end of the first brand extension. They're bringing Raw and SmackDown together. They're making the roster as one. So you're seeing.
We also
you saw
moved
a lot
into
of
the PG
crossover.
era as well.
I'm sorry?
We also moved into the PG era as well, and at the start of the PG era, guys,
Yeah.
they did something very particular. Some of the shots, like especially with weapons or something that caused blood, they would almost freeze frame the shot for a second and then cut away after the shot. It was very interesting. They did that for a while. I want to say at least a year or so when they moved into the PG era.
They were moving, I think after Chris Benoit, they were actually moving away from chair shots to the head once they got more evidence that, the brain was a little more scrambled and it caused a lot of harmful damage. You're seeing over those few years, but I think in respect to where we are now with Cena and Orton, we're already well into the PG era. I think we were well into it. I think in 09, 08, we're, getting away from the bloody stuff. We were getting more away from, you saw probably the last Bra and Pennies match, I think was in 2007. So you're moving away from all that starting 2008. So I think we're well into the PG era. But at that time, you have John Cena, who gained the World Heavyweight title, and you see Orton, who's held on to the WWE Championship after beating Daniel Bryan after cashing in Money in the Bank at SummerSlam 2013. So you're seeing them come back again. And you're seeing John Cena upping the ante, like he always does, say, why don't we do this? Why don't you put your WWE Championship on the line, and I'll put my world title up on the line? That's when we're seeing the brands. You're seeing the last of who's on Raw, who's on SmackDown. You're seeing now more of the rosters coming into one.
And this was really significant in history because it had been 50 years since if you want to even say that, but the culmination of professional sports entertainment, 50 years before there was one unified champion, because they had split the championships down with the WWF title and the big gold belt, and after the purchase of WCW and the big gold belt coming into WWE. And there was so much history there for 50 years, because now this was going to be who was going to be the first champion after 50 years really of WWE, like who is the signified as the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, who was going to be the end all of end all, the champion of champions. And Randy Orton and still is the youngest world heavyweight champion ever. I believe at the age of 24. Was able to capture the big gold belt, and then now he's putting that on the line, is that he wants to be honestly the last one to do it, to be the world heavyweight champion too. So that was a lot of significance there as well.
Yeah, I mean, what you saw, and I'm glad you brought up the 50-year mark. That was the 50th year of the WWE Championship.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very big, important. Now looking at it, it's probably one of the more important matches, and probably not the last one that they're going to have. But to be the champion, to be the world champion, to be the one. They sold it, the champion of champions.
The one.
Because that was going to be the final, the final blow to get out of the brand extension, to signify that now all the roster is one. It's not just who's on Raw, who's on SmackDown anymore. It's one roster.
They had all the guys out there at the championship ascension ceremony. They all were dressed really nice. Some of them were dressed
Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
You cannot go to Seattle, because I think it was in Seattle. You can't go to Seattle without having some Daniel Bryan fans in there.
Yeah.
And that's when the Yes movement was getting hot. That's when people were starting to get behind Daniel Bryan that year. Now thinking about it. And that ascension ceremony, nobody was paying attention, because all you could hear was Daniel Bryan chants. Daniel Bryan, Daniel Bryan, Well,
what they did here, though, they both relinquished their championships. They gave their titles. Right. Now that means that both now are no longer. They don't hold the title of champion at that point.
They do, but it will be the last. It'll be the last time that. When they came out in the crowd, when they came out to the ring, they were still considered their champions. Yeah. So it's just they weren't. It will be the last time that they'll be split champions.
Yeah. So
because the next time they'll meet, they're only going to be one.
The belt was unified, and Triple H, he raised the belt. It was slowly raised to the top of the ceiling, and at that point that signifies that now the World Heavyweight Championship, the big gold belt, and the WWE title are now one. And the crowd lost their mind. JBL was building it up really big. They're like, who's going to be champion? Who's going to be champion? Who's going to do it? Orton and Cena then shook hands, which is something we had never seen them do ever on TV. And they shook hands there, and that was quite the moment. And then right after that, Cena dropped him with a punch, and they started fighting. And but just for that 1 minute, the sportsmanship and the story, everything had culminated just to that handshake right there.
It did, because the weight of the importance of the match. You're going to be probably the first guy in quite some time to be the only champion. So you're like what we said, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. So,
and who better but to these two guys to be those two guys? There was no one else that could have told the story better. There's no one else that could have been the final champions. There's no one else that could have done that better. So they had it perfectly right there.
Yeah,
they had it perfectly.
They did.
And they did. And if and when they finally do this again, Orton and Cena for the 17th championship, they can refer back to this moment, and they can refer back to and they can build that moment again, but in a such a bigger capacity now.
I get goosebumps thinking about that.
Yeah.
Because, the match video before the match, it's going to be a walk through their history. And I know you and I might have a little tear in our eyes looking at that match. Hopefully we can see it live. If you don't know what we're talking about, probably the auspicious 17th world title reign where predicting that Randy Orton and John Cena will face each other again at a WrestleMania for the 17th, the culmination of a 17th world title. But I mean, what that did for them was great. I mean, even the matches afterward were, because they met again at the Royal Rumble 2014, and I think they met again at Hell in a Cell 2014.
Well, yeah, because Orton, he climbed the ladder after John Cena was handcuffed to the ropes.
That was right, yeah, handcuffed.
And that's cool too, because that was a little nod back to the handcuff thing that they used to do back in the day when Orton was obsessed with the handcuffs. I liked that they nodded to that history there.
More long-term storytelling,
Long-term storytelling. This was proper storytelling back then. That's what this was, because it was long-term storytelling. These guys fought for years. They fought for 2 years over, 3 years over.
Yep. I mean,
years.
Still.
And it accumulated to this, and then Cena he unscrews the turnbuckle and he still fights to the top, and then Orton pushes him off, and Cena hits his head. He takes that nasty fall off the side of the table. They had to plan that good because that could have gone bad either way. Cena could have easily snapped his neck right there had he missed.
Well, John Cena and Randy Orton are no Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
They're not ladder matches. If you watch them in ladder matches, it's almost cringeworthy because they're not ladder
it's
match
not their
specialists.
element.
They can throw ladders, they can use them as weapons, but they're not, they won't put on the most exciting ladder match, so but yeah, I mean it. And I think that was kind of the last big match
between them, yeah. Because Orton walks away the final World Heavyweight Champion. I think that was really cool that they did that. They signified that Orton was the youngest and now the last. He will forever be the last World Heavyweight Champion. I think that's something awesome to hold over. I think it is.
Well, I mean, I just believe that Orton, in the character that he was in, as the heel, I believe, they did execute it correctly. Because Cena, I don't think people would have really wanted Cena. It was kind of one of those swerve balls because if you really think about it, you would expect Cena to be the champion of champions, right?
Yeah.
And, but then he wrestles again. And at the Royal Rumble, nothing there. It's just a rematch. Moving along some, Daniel Bryan wins the title at WrestleMania 30, starting the Yes Movement. Only a month later, it's revealed that he's hurt, he's injured. Daniel Bryan relinquishes the title again. The title, not again. I mean, a year later he would have to. And then now you see John Cena in another ladder match, the Money in the Bank ladder match, the ladder match of Money in the Bank for the world title, and he wins that match. Only to lose it to Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, of all fucking people. And they give Brock the new championship too, because at this time they were both still using both the belts. They were both holding the double championships, and then they give Brock the brand new title instead of giving fucking Cena the brand new title. That always pissed me off.
Yeah. You have to look at the career, and we can talk about that year with Brock Lesnar. I mean, that year with Brock
we're doing
Lesnar,
a Brock Lesnar podcast. Trust me. I have quite to say about Brock Lesnar.
So there you guys have it. One of our future shows.
I'm down to do that next, honestly. I'm down to do a Lesnar episode next.
That's fine. We can do that. There you guys go. But anyway, you don't really see Cena and Orton, and then they go into Hell in a Cell for the second time with one another in 2014. It was a number one contenders match, wasn't it?
Yeah, number one contenders match.
Yeah, not my craziest match that I wanted to see, but I wasn't crazy for it. But they don't meet again. I mean, they meet little by little, but not in a major
And that's
sense.
it. Yeah, there's no more after that.
I mean, they meet in little matches here and
Yeah.
there, but nothing to, it's kind of one of those, hey, John Cena and Randy Orton renew their rivalry for one night only, right here on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown Live. But
And Cena eventually captures Sweet 16 as the 16th championship. When does he do that?
Royal Rumble 2017. How can we forget the classic? And we can do an episode of the trilogy with AJ Styles and
I
John
loved
Cena
AJ and Cena.
too.
Cena sucks.
But Cena sucks.
I love that. We're gonna beat up John Cena. Cena sucks.
Right. The champ that runs the camp. I remember that when he did that too, and he was a self-proclaimed face that runs the place. You got it. That match at Royal Rumble 2017 was probably one of the best championship matches I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And, for him to hit Sweet 16 like that in a very highly competitive match was well worth it. Take nothing away from AJ Styles in his first year in the WWE. It was months into his first year. Probably the first 9 months he became WWE champion and had a very effective title reign. So, I mean, we can even do an episode on AJ Styles. I mean, that's 2 episodes in itself. But, Cena hit Sweet 16, and now Orton is at 14, tied with Triple H.
He beat Drew McIntyre later this year. Late
2020 in October, beating Drew McIntyre.
So they have an opportunity here for, I can see them giving Orton 15 here within the next couple years or so.
Yeah, they could, if it's hot enough, if it's good enough.
Orton could even, go to SmackDown and win the Universal Championship. That's something that he's never done, but that could still count. It still counts towards 15. It's just interesting that we have to speculate now is how do we eventually Orton win 16? How do we push from there? How do you get to see 16 versus 16? Does one person win 17? One person the champion? Is it going to be the most ideal thing to do is to somehow vacate a championship and for both of them to be in the running for that vacated championship. That would be the best thing to do.
Exactly. That's the only logical thing you can do, because honestly, if Orton's 16 and Cena's 16, and Orton holds the title, it'll be kind of obvious that John Cena would beat Randy Orton, to win 17. But it has to be one of those scenarios, like AJ was saying, there has to be a way to vacate the title or somehow relinquish it from somebody or whatnot, or take away the title from Orton somehow, strip him. But again, to vacate the title would be the only logical step that I can see for that to become possible. And then but it has to be a good story. It has to be something along those lines.
And they can refer back to their long-term storytelling abilities as well when that day does eventually come, because they have so much to refer back to. They have so much history to refer back to. They could even say, some people have gone as far as to criticize that the ending between Orton and Cena was lackluster, because I don't see it as the ending, because the 2013 match and the unification match, I thought it was all right. It was good. Like we said, they were out of their element. That's not their biggest thing. And then, they didn't meet again. They met again in like here and there. But some people say that was lackluster. That obviously the story's not done, because it would just be such a waste you have that story, you have that history. It would just be such a waste to piss that away if you don't do something with it.
Exactly. I mean, once again, it'll be probably the biggest WrestleMania main event in history.
Men will weep.
Maybe of all time.
Men our age will weep.
It is one of those where you're going to look at it and you're going to look at the history, because to us, it's a childhood closure.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most important eras of our time, because we were growing up in that time.
The first thing
So
that
for
I
you and
saw
I,
live with my own
yeah,
two eyes was Cena and Orton. That was the first thing I ever saw live.
and it would come full circle for you.
Hmm.
It would come full circle for a lot of people, and you know, it'll be kind of one of those "Where were you when that match happened?" T-shirt sales, their T-shirts. They usually every WrestleMania time they have the shirts that have the match on it. The main event. And they have their statistics in the back. Everybody's going to want to buy one of those
Yep.
shirts. So it's imminent. I hope. Hopefully they can consider that, but it's going to be in the running for the next 3 to 5 years.
These
Probably we're going to
guys
have to keep a close eye.
these guys gave us so many good memories over the years. So many good memories. And a lot of those storytelling, like we said, for years, 2 to 3 years, from 2007 to 2010, was just all Orton and Cena for
Yep,
years.
and yep, that's the rivalry that held probably this new era together, really. But I'm certain that they're going to do it when they want to do it. And I think, Vince McMahon is going to give them a lot of leeway of how they can see it going. And because it's probably going to be the last match, probably, of John Cena's career, probably the last match of Randy Orton's, or probably the last of that era we'll see.
And the two of
Because I
them,
think it'll be
they'll be
um,
ascended to the Hall of Fame together at some point. The two of them will be probably in the same class.
I see them more as their own headlining classes,
Mm.
to be honest, because you're looking at, once again, if you talk about that class, you look at Brock Lesnar, you look at Shelton Benjamin, who probably won't headline his own class, unfortunately. Um, Cena, Orton, and Batista is co-headlining his own class. So we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
Probably would be good to have them both together. But you know what, though? Have nobody else. If those two are going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame, those are the only two of that year. Nobody else. I think it should just be those two.
And the funniest thing too is that they also spent time together in tag teams, and they actually work well together as a tag team, and it makes sense too because they work well together so well in the ring as well. So they
They're
just
they're the last of a dying breed,
they are,
honestly.
yeah.
They came from real hard time independence. You're talking about independence where you hear those stories about hot dogs and a handshake. That's the time. They came up when nobody wanted to go to an independent show. But because
Because
WWF didn't come to your town, that was the only thing close to getting that.
and Orton,
So
he even though him being a third generation, he still had to earn his way in because as much as Orton is Orton, you still have to remember his personal life with he did have some personal life issues before WWE and WWF with the him being in the military and getting dishonorably discharged and having issues with substance and Cena with his football career and other things going not the way that he wanted to, him having a hard time in Massachusetts, things in that, they both had to pay their way. They both had to pay their dues. So just because Orton, his last name was Orton, he still needed to prove himself. He still needed to show that they were the guys. And back then, Orton was the face. Orton became the king of his area, and rightfully so because he was just that good back then, and they were able to tell, like we said, 2 decades full of incredible stories that mean the world to me, that I can remember, that when I think wrestling, I go back to Cena and Orton and tell, where were you when all those times that you saw those matches, or how many times you stay up late at night and afterwards. Like I remember watching, after the Royal Rumble, we go back to Royal Rumble 2008. Like, how long did you talk about that for? Like weeks afterwards. You're like, oh, did you see that Cena returned and they're setting up this match? And then I remember being so excited to go to the No Way Out in Vegas to see these two guys again. It was just such a spectacle.
I told you this earlier. I remember where when talking about these matches, I can remember where I was at the time, where I was in my life, and where I was as a kid, you know, and these guys carried us through teenage years, and not even teenage years, like when we were in like from grade school,
Yep.
you know, from elementary school, from middle school to high school to adult life, they carried us, and we're still talking about them to this day, you know, and I'm forever grateful for it because we grew up with these guys. We can literally say that.
Yeah, we did.
Know, two of the very best.
Well,
Oh man, they debuted when we were like what, in the first or second grade,
something like that. Yeah.
So, yeah. And here we are, grown adults today, talking about them on.
They were the
podcast.
Icons. For me, they were the guys. They were the icons. They were the legends for me. And to be a fan of this I would not have been if not for those two, honestly.
Right. I think they have. My appreciation for them is a little more now than it ever has been. Actually, talking about this, the profound respect I have for them.
Yes.
For carrying the business to where it is, and hopefully they get the best send off that they can. They earned it. They deserve it. And Orton's still working hard, still kicking butt to this day. Cena may not be around as often, but when he does come back, it's very, very memorable. Hopefully we see him in April, you know, at WrestleMania, if you guys can make it, you know. Love it. Love it.
Well, guys, I think that is the end of it for tonight. I know we started early tonight because we had a lot to cover with Cena and Orton, but tomorrow night, if you'll join me back, we will be doing In Your House, the pay-per-view. I haven't decided
In Your House!
I haven't decided if we're going to do NXT beforehand or not. Maybe not. But just if you tune in tomorrow, expect some 90s references and a lot of 90s stuff. It'll be In Your House.
Yes, Vince McMahon, Jerry Lawler, and Jim Ross on commentary. Oh man, it's gonna be an aside. I love In Your House.
I hope
those are pay-per-views of a bygone era for sure.
Well, I hope you guys like the set that I made for that, and also Sarah369, as she's in the chat, she helped me design the new championship for our women. So you guys will tune into that. We'll see a new champion for the women, a brand new belt that we built from scratch. And then I'm also working on. Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm working on trying to make a winter arena too for Winter Slam instead of Summer Slam. So we'll do Winter Slam.
Winter Slam. Woo! Winter Slam.
And yeah, we'll look for some merch and things like that.
Yeah. What kind of merch? Yeah. So what? Hoodies?
Sure. Why not?
Sweatshirts.
Yeah.
Sweatpants. A jumpsuit. I think we will look great on a jumpsuit. Can we do a jumpsuit?
I think it's possible. Awesome. But yes, guys, so give us a follow, give us a subscribe, give us we love doing this, and thank you guys for sticking around and coming by each show and talking with us and learning wrestling and being, hopefully we're entertained for you guys, and we love reading your comments and you guys interacting and everything like that. So
yes, indeed. I greatly appreciate it. I'm having a great time. We're 3 weeks deep into this?
Yeah, so we'll be back next Friday, me and Jeremy. We'll talk the weekend review, and then we will do Saturday. We'll do Brock Lesnar. That'll be our topic for next discussion. Will be Brock.
And next Sunday we got the Royal Rumble.
Yep.
So we'll watch that together.
Yes, guys. But we'll see you then next week, guys. And we'll see you then tomorrow night as well. My name is AJ East Coast, and I have been your host, and I hope y'all have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.